And yeah, we also have on the show ILuvUrMovies. He is actually a clan member of IGN.
Hey, what's up, guys?
What is up, Movies?
Not too much. Just kind of freezing today. We got a lot of snow where I live at, so it's been an interesting day.
It must have moved its way from northeast or northwest in Seattle, moved its way over to you guys.
Yeah, that's exactly what it did. Yes.
Because they had a snow day at Bungie yesterday, I believe it was.
You can't handle the snow up there in Seattle.
Yes, and ILuvUrMovies. He is a member of the IGN clan for the Destiny game on PC. He's been playing Destiny since the Destiny 2 PC version came out, and he joined the IGN clan shortly after, and as soon as we joined the IGN clan, we've been playing with him ever since, and he's just a really great person and a really awesome guy to play with. And Movies, I gotta ask, how did you get your name?
So, a long time ago, there was a bunch of G.I. Joe PSAs that made its way around the internet, and these guys kind of did little voiceovers and cut things together. And there was one specific one that I can't remember the G.I. Joe character. He was the guy that was in the big diving suit, and he came up out of it was the one where the kid was out boating, and there was a thunderstorm, and he comes up out of the water to basically tell the kids to get out of the water, essentially. But because he's in a giant water suit, he just sounds like me 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 me. They can't actually say any words, and the kid's like talking for him, and he ends up calling him Buzz Lightyear. And as he gets closer, he leans over and says, "Are you Buzz Lightyear? I love your movies." So that's where it came from. So if you've ever seen it before, definitely check it out. It's pretty hilarious, and there's a bunch of them that are really funny. And usually nobody knows what that reference is from, but I actually did run into one guy in the wild in Destiny. He's still on my friends list, and he just randomly, local chatted and said, "Hey, is that from the G.I. Joe PSA?" And I'm like, "It is." So it was kind of interesting to find somebody else that has a weird humor as I do.
So there was a tie-in with Toy Story because of the whole Buzz Lightyear thing.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Nice. Very clever.
That is really clever indeed. Very cool.
I ended up doing that one when I first got into Twitch. I started using that name because it was better than my old name.
Very cool. And how did you get started with Destiny?
So I was interested in Destiny 1, but I'm a PC only. I haven't had a console since Xbox, and kind of a lot of games during that time period did that tease like we might come to PC, maybe, possibly, and then they didn't. I was actually really excited because it kind of reminded me of Borderlands, which was one of the big games that I played a long time. It was kind of like Borderlands, got together with Halo and had a baby is kind of what it made me think of. So I was actually excited to play Destiny 1, but because it didn't come to PC, I never did. So when Destiny 2 came around and they finally said, yes, it's coming out on PC, I was actually pretty excited. Had a lot of coworkers that had played Destiny 1 that were interested, and we were going to play together, and which we did at initial launch, but they kind of quickly fell off like a lot of people did, unfortunately. So I started doing LFG, ended up getting into LFG raid with another clan member, Chrismo. We played a couple times and ended up just kind of staying in touch, and ended up just kind of playing randomly together. We just kind of kept each other's contact information, and then Chrismo actually helped me get into the IGN clan. I also played with Fran a few times randomly on stream, and so just kind of my name got out there, and luckily enough, I was able to get in.
That's Fran Mirabella the third, if anybody was wondering.
Yes, the man with the hair, with the impeccable hair.
The best hair in the industry.
Yes, indeed.
And for anyone who does not know, what is IGN? Is this like a factory? Like what is this?
I think they get paid by publishers to do reviews that are slightly in their favor. I think that's what they are. At least that's what they always get accused of, at least. No, yeah, I mean, everybody knows what IGN is. Definitely a great source for gaming news. I think it's one of those. If you actually are in the community and guys like Destin and CJ and Fran, you really get to see the human side of IGN, which a lot of people don't. A lot of people just interact with the website and the forums and they throw shade at IGN. But I would say I'd encourage you check out their streams. They really are that human side of the gaming industry, and I think you'll gain a lot more respect for the company if you do.
Yeah, very true. Because I met Destin and Fran in person when I went down to GuardianCon in 2016. I talked to Fran for about 15 minutes. What a great human being! Like, yeah. He's so genuine and warm, and he just adds so much to the conversation. And he's just so positive. He's a good guy. And Destin's pretty cool too.
Yeah, Destin can get a little heated in PvP. But
he gets salty, but he has passion for the game. I can tell.
He definitely does. Yeah, I don't think they get enough credit for what they really do.
Yeah,
definitely. And I've played with those guys, and I have a ton of respect for them. Especially guys like Destin, who was able to complete Scourge of the Past on the first day. That's major props. You look on the outside and you just see the articles that they release or the videos that they come out with, which are all awesome pieces of content with their own unique perspectives on the game. But people don't realize that these guys really put their heart and soul into playing these games and into being prepared for the new content that's dropping. And they put so much time and effort into everything they do. And I have a ton of respect for them for that.
Yeah, and Fran's gone on to work with Kind of Funny now too, and he's killing it over there. Kind of Funny, he's hosted Kind of Funny Games Daily the past couple times this week, and he's been making appearances on the Kind of Funny Games Cast, and I think it's been a great addition to the team.
Yes, he's a really great guy, and I've enjoyed playing with him as well. He's a really awesome, down-to-earth person, and also I always enjoy his streams. He does have a Twitch channel at, I believe it's FM3_, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
So you guys definitely check him out. He's really awesome, and he streams a lot of Fortnite recently, I've noticed. He has checked out the Anthem game as well, which, who hasn't, right? Everybody's checked out the new Anthem game.
Yeah, he played quite a bit of the Anthem demo, so I checked out a few of his streams and kind of stopped by and said hello. I had a lot of issues with Anthem on my computer, so I didn't really get in and play with him too much.
I had a problem with it myself as well, because I have dual monitors, and one of the monitors has a problem with the HDR setting, and it seems to automatically, by default, put the HDR on. And I can't seem to turn it off, and the entire screen would flicker. Really annoying.
Before we moved on to the next thing, movies. You said you had an Xbox, correct?
Yes.
Did you play any Bungie games before? Any Halo or anything like that on your Xbox?
Halo 1 and 2. I played both of those.
Awesome.
It was one of those great memories because it's that real first kind of couch co-op experience, and I remember just teaming up in some of those things in Halo 2. There was just a lot of action, a lot of fun, just a lot of innovation during that time period that was along with Halo. So yeah,
Halo 2 was great. Not only the campaign was great, the multiplayer was great, the map design was great. Everything was awesome about that game.
Halo Reach is my favorite. Playing firefights, that was so much fun.
Yeah, the firefight
for
modes.
Hours.
Uh-huh.
That was, in my opinion, the true definition of endgame content, being able to play firefights. And they took you 30 minutes in time length, and we didn't really complain about that, did we? Because we enjoyed playing these activities. And the further you progressed, the better the drops you got.
And the more difficult it got too, and the difficulty ramped right up.
We really need to go back to this system. Bungie, if you are listening, we love you, but please bring some of that back. And movies, do you have a favorite weapon in Destiny?
This one was a tough one. I was thinking about this one. I've had a lot of different weapons that I've gone through. If you would have talked to me a few months ago, I probably would have said, Better Devils, because I'm a big hand cannon person. I had three Better Devils, and each one of them had over 20,000 kills on them. So I used it quite a bit. But I think I'm going to say, which will probably be not everybody's first one they would think about, but it's actually the Midnight Coup is my favorite weapon. I'm really about that workhorse. No matter what build I'm using or what scenario I'm using, the coup just works. It's kind of weird because you can almost use it as like a sniper. If you kind of slow down your shots and really aim it up, you can hit things from across the map and do a lot of damage still. My one and only coup, I got it as a raid drop. I didn't get the as Tefty Teft. He always kind of talks about people who bought their coup from the vendor. Mm-hmm. This was my actual coup that dropped, and it was much later. And I still have already over like 40,000 kills on just that Midnight Coup alone. So it's that every situation it just works, and I think that's why I've got that special bond with it. So yeah. It's
a blue collar weapon for sure.
Yes, it really is. So, anything that steps in front of it, it'll put it down.
Yeah.
I've been really enjoying the Blast Furnace since Black Armory came out. I've been using it a lot. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I've been using that quite a bit, more in strikes and things like that, kind of giving that safety range. But I got a really nice drop with Rampage, and it's got range for the masterwork, so it's Rampage and Outlaw on it, so it rips pretty hard. I still find like just the kill time with the coup is just hard to beat.
Yeah, the Midnight Coup is awesome, and I remember a very specific time in Destiny when me and Shadow Price were playing the Leviathan raid on Prestige, and we were playing on the Bathers part, right? Remember that? Mm-hmm. And I was really struggling. I was really struggling staying alive because the ads were kicking my ass. And so finally he was like, dude, switch to a Midnight Coup, and I did, and it completely changed the entire experience for me because I was actually able to do damage and kill things, and it felt like a very stable weapon, and it had extra perks that you were granted on the Leviathan raid, so that was even another plus. And I didn't take it off my character ever since.
About the coup is those perks work in synergy, like with each other. Rampage and what is it? Rampage, Outlaw, and what was the other perk on that? I know I had Rampage and Outlaw. I'm not sure what the other one is.
Yeah, it's got a smooth grip, and there's a couple different barrels that you can use that work really well with each other. So it's one of those guns that just kind of finds headshots, and as long as you're keeping your headshots going, it's like a machine gun. You can just keep firing and firing, and the reloads are so fast with Outlaw that it just does work.
You would have really liked the Fatebringer then from Destiny 1 movies.
Okay, so here are the perks for Midnight Coup. You have lightweight frame, small born, corkscrew rifling, extended barrel, rampage, ambitious assassin, and outlaw.
That's more ambitious assassin. That was the perk I was thinking of.
Yeah, the lightweight frame is actually a big thing as well. People underestimate how much it makes a difference in your movement speed, especially when you're trying to run through a strike. Anytime I feel like I'm moving slow, I'm like, oh, let me switch to my coup and let's go. So I actually look for lightweight frame on a lot of weapons.
Yeah, I feel since Forsaken came out, I kind of stopped using it as much because new weapons came out that were interesting. I've been making more of an effort to try out new weapons in the game.
Yeah, Ace of Spades was definitely one that was a contender to unseat my Midnight Coup. That's definitely a fun weapon to use.
You know what? If you don't have the what is that gun? Not Forgotten or the Luna's Howl, you better have an Ace of Spades if you're in comp.
Yeah.
Or last word now.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Or the last word. That's what I've been using. And we will be talking more about the last word later on in the show. So very cool. And Movies, do you have a favorite activity in Destiny?
So I am one of those people that I just enjoy everything, just get out there and just playing and shooting and enjoying the mechanics. But if I was to narrow it down to one specific activity, I probably would say Nightfalls and Strikes. I think that it's one of those unique activities that gives you the ability to kind of have a layer of strategy when you're trying to min-max and do speed runs and things like that, which you kind of have some of that in the raid, but a lot of the mechanics in the raid kind of force you into a specific strategy, whereas with Nightfalls depends on your team comp and things like that make you come up with new strategies and make things work even better. So it kind of gives you that ability to get in there with your fingers and say, okay, we're going to try this one thing and see if that works well. It also is one of the few activities that really gives you that opportunity to farm for weapons, and in a lot of cases, really good weapons. And you can make them as difficult as you want to. I mean, having that Nightfall card is kind of fun. And I've seen a lot of people on streams where they're like, hey, let's do this crazy card combo and make it really difficult on ourselves. So it kind of gives that flexibility. One other thing I think I like about Strikes as well is it kind of gives you an opportunity to showcase the actual unique skills in each class. A lot of the game tends to be, just about, this character is DPS, I've got this particular skill, but like, for example, doing like this week, the Strange Terrain, it's one of those where the Warlock actually becomes invaluable because you can put down a rift with Lunafaction boots and you can one phase the boss. So that's a unique skill that only the Warlock can do. And it kind of, when a lot of the skill sets of the classes kind of feel the same, it really can shine and see those differences when you're in Nightfall.
Yeah, it's really fun to be able to melt the boss. Like,
yeah,
you can struggle through, or just you're getting bombarded by ads throughout, and sometimes you have to strategize with who's going to take down this shield with your elemental weapon and things like that. But then when you get the boss, it's like, all right, let's go, let's melt this bad boy.
What I like about Nightfalls is the fact that you get a chance to expose yourself to a wide variety of areas in the game. It's not just you spending, 20 minutes doing a boss fight in one particular place. You're always moving to different places, traveling to different locations to get to that final boss fight. And it's a very special fight, especially during that first time that you do it, right? Because you've never done it before, so you don't really know the mechanics, and then you wipe. And Nightfalls can be pretty unforgiving, right? Before we were leveled up to where we're kind of overpowered now. But when Nightfalls just came out, they were pretty challenging, and I really love that challenge and being able to play these activities that transform over time into activities you can even farm and get weapons and armor from.
And I think it's also a little easier to get into because it's a 3-person activity as opposed to like a 6-person for like a raid. So it's a lot easier to get a couple people together and run them. It's one of the few places where the matchmaking actually doesn't hurt you as much. I've had some interesting experiences with in a raid where it gets a few randoms in and comes with challenges, we'll say. So it's one of those things that you can kind of get in, really kind of flex your strategic muscles, have a lot of fun, and still get something valuable out of it in a relative, small amount of time. So, yeah.
Yeah, and it's also pretty cool that you can go in and you play with people who've never played before, and they have strategies that you've never tried before. Like, we went into the Nokris Nightfall the other week, and we pretty much used Wardcliff Coil to melt down Nokris in one phase. That was pretty cool. Discovering new ways for you to complete an activity.
Yeah, like how they had like shadows, like you could just like melt that boss too, usually with like melting point, and apparently now the Legends of Acarius, since they got buffed by 50% their damage.
Yeah, I'm hearing really good things about Legend of Acarius, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely want to get back to the Leviathan and get my catalyst for that.
I am down to do that. I would totally be down to do that. I actually enjoyed the Leviathan raid. I think that it was fun. I do think that it was not what we expected for the first raid to come out in the new game in Destiny 2, but I think it was really fun though. Now, movies. So what game did you play before you played Destiny? I know you mentioned Ghost Recon and you mentioned Borderlands.
Yeah, the game that I was playing like immediately before I started playing Destiny was Ghost Recon Wildlands. Before that was Division. I'm always playing Borderlands 2 at some point. I have friends that every once in a while hit me up and say, "Hey, let's hop in there." Definitely a big kind of looter shooter, and I enjoy the RPG mechanics overall. Some games can go a little too far with RPG for my taste, but I kind of like Borderlands had just enough in it to keep the game interesting and really make you want to put in those hours. I think I had something over 2,000 hours in Borderlands 2 by the time I was done with it, and I built out all 7 characters, and it was really that the uniqueness of no 2 builds were the same because of all the different perks and things like that you could build up. Yeah, I think Ghost Recon Wildlands was also a little underrated. It actually is a really fun game, and surprisingly a really fun game to solo, but even more fun when you actually have a group of 4. And a lot of things that they did really well in that game, including PvP, surprisingly. And I think that's something that I didn't expect because they weren't even planning on putting PvP in the game from launch. But the community really cried out for it, and it's really unique because it's very much more strategic. They did build out where it's a class-based type system, which you kind of have to make it make sense when you have as diverse of builds as you could have to make it kind of balanced. You kind of have to have those classes to go in there, but they still felt good, and it was very much. It wasn't like a run and gun. You couldn't really do like COD and just kind of run around shooting things. You really had to. If you poked your head out, you would get shot, and you wouldn't make it very long. So I actually really enjoyed it for that because each class really felt like what you were playing. So if you were a sniper, you were a sniper. You were sneaking around the map. You were finding a perch up on top of a hill. And if people found out where you were perched at, you would get punished for it. So it was a really unique experience.
What was the game, the shooter before Borderlands that was a looter shooter? What was the looter shooters before Borderlands?
To me, that was the first one, really.
Yeah.
I can't really think of anything before that. And I mean, most people do attribute that combination to Gearbox for kind of coming up with that concept. A lot of people don't realize that, and I've never seen that the original Borderlands game was supposed to be a lot different than it came out being. It was supposed to be like more realistic graphics.
I saw that at Spike TV, the original trailer on Spike TV for Borderlands. Yeah, it was. It was supposed to be more realistic, but it ended up being more animated.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that they're diehard Borderlands 1 fans, and there's the diehard Borderlands 2, and they usually don't cross paths. But I think with the first one, the attraction is there was a lot more of the ability to kind of customize your build because there was a lot more specific perks on each weapon. So those really diehard RPG people loved the first game a lot more, whereas I kind of like Borderlands 2 more because you still had that, but it wasn't where you had to manage that. The first one kind of felt like that's all you did all day was work a spreadsheet to figure out your character's powers and stuff. And plus, I think the overall interface was way better in the second one. So,
yeah, I didn't play much of the first one. I played more of the second one, so I don't really have much to say about the first one. I think Cornholio does, though, because I think he played a lot of the first one.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, me and Mr. Swirly actually played it together quite a bit. We played through the entire game multiple times, and we played through some of the DLC as well.
The Claptrap DLC.
Claptrap, yep.
Yeah.
I did actually also pick up the complete collection of Borderlands 2 on the PC and on PSVR, which that's not very good experience in my opinion. I much prefer to play shooting games, with a keyboard and mouse or a controller, one of the two. But VR, it just turning sideways, it makes you very nauseous, and when you look down, it's not a good experience in my opinion. But the game itself, awesome game, really amazing game.
Yeah, I actually played Borderlands 2 before I played the first one. I went back and played the first one because I had seen a lot of game footage and things like that, and I was like, I don't know if that's my cup of tea. But then when Borderlands 2 came out, I kind of saw all the upgrades to the interface and a lot of the changes that occurred, and I actually got into it late, but once I got into it, I was pretty hooked, and then I ended up picking up the first game on one of those Steam sales, and I actually really enjoyed it. So it was interesting to see some of the backstory behind the characters that made it into the second game.
It's amazing when you play through the first one. After playing the second one, the graphics really evolve.
Oh yeah,
in that time, it's pretty amazing.
The graphics and even the gun, the mechanics, just the shooting feels completely different.
And then there was also the pre-sequel, correct? You played that one?
I did. It definitely did not get a good reception. I think I still put about 400 hours into the pre-sequel because I really enjoyed the different characters. I think what it didn't capture me was the fact that it was made by 2K Australia, and the writing just wasn't quite there. It was still Borderlands as far as the humor, but it was like Australian humor, and I think a lot of people had a hard time kind of getting into it just from a story and humor side. I think it was still good, but it just didn't have that 2,000 hours good. But they had some really unique, what they called the butt stomp, where you could, fly up in the air and then slam down and kill things. So some really good new mechanics that were a lot of fun. And I think that's what kept me more engaged than anything else, because they had the ice weapons and things like that. So overall, I think 2K did a really good job with it, but it just didn't quite hit the mark as for what people were wanting next.
Now, did you have a favorite expansion in Borderlands that you enjoyed the most? They had quite a few expansions.
Yeah, wow. I don't even know if I remember all the names of them.
The Tiny Tina one. That's about it.
Yeah, Tiny Tina was. I think Tiny Tina was probably actually, the Torg one was pretty amazing too. Torg is probably my favorite character, just because he's so ridiculous. He screams all the time. Yeah, I think Tiny Tina was probably one of the most creative expansions I've ever played in a game. For them to take a game like Borderlands 2 and essentially turn it into a tabletop game.
Dungeons and Dragons style. Right?
Yeah, exactly. It was a really unique experience, and especially for the cost. I think it was only like $10 or something like that, and you got hours of play out of that thing, and it was almost its own separate game. It's introduced a lot of really cool stuff in that, so it's hard to ignore that one as probably one of the best expansions. I will say that there was actually a Claptrap expansion in the pre-sequel that was pretty freaking amazing, actually. The concept was that you were inside of Claptrap's mind, and that was a lot of fun.
I have the full the Game of the Year edition that has all those DLCs. How do you access them? Do you have to beat the game first?
You don't, but it starts at a level that kind of has that expectation of you having leveled up your character quite a bit. So it's a little tough if you go on there straight away.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I think with the expansions, they have like a certain light level or that you need to have in order to not get destroyed in like one shot.
Yeah, pretty much.
And if you go into those areas, I mean, you can go in and you can get power leveled if you choose to play that way, which I don't recommend, by the way, but very under leveled. So you need to play through more of the story. Once you get to, I would say, towards the 2/3 of the game, that's where you start to be able to play the end game stuff and the DLCs.
So did either of you get do OP in Borderlands 2?
No, I did not.
It was a really unique concept, and it definitely kind of helped that in-game. So for anyone that's unfamiliar, it's OP is for overpowered, and it was kind of a horde mode type thing where you could get your weapons specifically up to 8 levels above your player level. So it's kind of a means to make yourself still more effective as far as like killing. As far as taking damage, your character was still the same, but you could put out a lot more damage if you had an OP8 weapon. So it was just kind of a fun way to extend the play and really build out your character still. So it was a unique experience that I haven't really seen in any other game.
Should they bring something like that to Destiny?
I think it would be interesting. I don't know if their current infrastructure would really work for it, though. It'd be hard to see how that would translate into the way they kind of have their character designs built out. I think you have to have a little more flexibility in your perks and things like that to make it make sense.
Yeah.
It would be interesting for the next Destiny, maybe Destiny 3, because you got to remember, people like Luke Smith, they have a background in Warcraft and other big RPG games. So it will be interesting to see what influence they bring to the table now that Activision is no longer in the picture.
Yeah, I was always kind of surprised, kind of knowing the background of a lot of those people, that there wasn't more RPG in it. And I wonder if that is them kind of trying to attract a specific audience, or if they're just wanting to try something different, or kind of what led to the current design decisions.
I think a little bit of both. I think pressure from Activision. I think trying something different, and just a combination of those ideas.
Now, movies, what are your impressions of the annual pass so far?
So when I think about the annual pass, I kind of think of it in two ways, both the value and also kind of like on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel about it? So far, from a value perspective, I think it's definitely been worth it so far. I think they put a lot of work into it. They did bring a lot of new concepts into it. So the price you paid for the annual pass, I think we've already got our money's worth so far, and we've got more to come at this point. So from just a value standpoint, I think they did a great job. From like a 1 to 10 scale, honestly, I'd probably put it around a 6 out of 10, honestly. Because if you think about it, we've got the forges, Black Armory, we've got New Raid, and then we have the Exotic Quest, which is Last Word. I think Black Armory was good in its concept. The execution was a little questionable. And I think that's something that has pretty much been echoed across the community, that the grind, it wasn't a satisfying grind. It was just a grind. The constant having to go back to Ada every time you did anything, just having to rehash the same activities over and over again, which for me, I enjoy the gunplay itself, so I don't mind that. But when your main source of farming is through the forge, and it takes you that long to even get to the point where you can even attempt to get a weapon, it's a little too punishing, I think. So that it kind of suffers in that regard. What the positive side of it is they did some really good things with the weapons themselves. Specifically, I would say the hammerhead. the Hammerhead has been that one weapon that has kind of freed up your exotic slot a little bit. You don't feel as tied to doing a heavy weapon as an exotic as you did before the Forge came out. It was almost like if you didn't have an exotic in your heavy slot, then you weren't building out your build correctly. So I think that's freed it up a little bit to where we can try some of the exotic primaries and not feel like we're suffering in damage and DPS. So I think that's a really positive thing that's come out of it. We'll talk about the last word quest a little bit later, but I think one of the sentiments that unfortunately has come out of it is it's a step in the right direction. And I feel like the overall community is kind of getting tired of saying that with a lot of these things. So I definitely enjoyed the Annual Pass so far, but I think definitely can do a little better.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish they had more story to it, because it would be more interesting to know the backstory behind Ada 1 without having to go into lore cards and read Grimoire. So ultimately, in my opinion, I think that the Annual Pass is a great value for the hardcore player like ourselves who come back to Destiny on a daily basis. If you do play enough Destiny, then I think that playing through Scourge of the Past and playing through the Forges to get things like the Blast Furnace makes it worth it, in my opinion. Then you also have the Niobe Labs that you are able to do and access, and you do get things when you accomplish it. Yes, they could have done a better job with your rewards and your drops, but you still get something, so there is incentive for you to complete it at least one time, right?
And the overall execution, too.
Yes.
I think ultimately there really is that concept of value of how much work you put into the game versus what you get out of it, and I think that was where Niobe Labs really kind of fell. Was a ghost and an emblem for that the amount of work that you had to put into that isn't really a value in my opinion, and I feel like there's that throughout the game. Ghosts with telemetry on it aren't exciting, and it's not something that I really look for. So there's a lot of places in the game where I think they really need to reevaluate how much time and effort the player has to put in and what they actually get out of it, which kind of goes back to the grind. It kind of lacks that fluidity. It's it comes down to time, effort, and reward, and you can kind of punish in 1 to 2 of those areas, but if you punish in all 3 of them, it's just not fun for the player, and it kind of drives them away. And I think they're teetering on punishing in all 3 areas right now. So
those are good points.
Yeah, because we play this game. I mean, we play it for a story, we play it for the gameplay, but we also play it for the loot, the chase. So.
Yeah, and I think that if you look at how Destiny evolved through Destiny 1 and Destiny 2, I think that towards the end of Destiny 1, it really seemed like they were starting to really get it. They were embracing all of the old raids that they had in the past, bringing them back, turning them into exotic weapons. They were bringing back old weapons. They were making the game feel special. Think about the Omnigul Strike. How many times have we farmed it to get that perfect grasp of Malik? And it was a fun experience. We enjoyed doing it, and they could have the same thing in this game.
4-hour sessions.
Yeah, well, that keeps players in the game. That keeps players engaged.
Yeah, one thing I will definitely applaud for the Annual Pass so far, even though I have not had a chance to play it myself, the raid, the Scourge of the Past, I like that it still has the kind of puzzle mindset, but it's almost more of a tactical. I've watched a lot of gameplay of it, and where you still have that strategic kind of mindset with it. It's more like you feel like you're actually on a strike. You're actually part of a fire team that's actually gelling together to accomplish an actual kind of military strike, because you got the map in the front of it where you get the one person that's calling out where the enemy's at and things like that. So instead of having the crazy puzzles like in Leviathan, where you stand on one foot and throw salt over your shoulder and wink twice, and then the door opens. It's more of actual like gunplay and actual tactics and things like that. And the boss completely different than anything we've seen in the game. So I definitely applaud them for kind of going outside the box for that raid, and I kind of look forward to playing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should definitely plan some time and do that raid, because I would definitely enjoy playing that again. I had a lot of fun playing it, and it's very different from anything we played before. So moving on, movies, I did want to ask you one last thing before we move on to the next subject, and that is, what are you looking forward to in the next season of The Drifter that's coming, I believe, next month, if I'm not mistaken?
Season of the Drifter, I'm kind of excited to see what Bungie can do with a little more time. I feel like in Black Armory, you saw a lot of recycling of things. There's a reason why people call it Season of the Balls, because you've done nothing but throw balls around. Ever since it was introduced, in Warmind, I think it was when that mechanic first came in, it's been put in everything ever since. So you constantly see, in Vidocs and different things where Bungie is talking about, where they need more time to make content. It's hard, following that schedule. So I feel like, at least if nothing else, they've had a little more time for the Drifter, and we might see some new stuff come out. Hopefully some new mechanics. I'm definitely excited for the Zur bounties to see how exactly they're going to approach that. Because right now, with as punishing as it is to get exotics, to have a way to be able to seek that out directly without buying it, which I think is a terrible idea. I want to be able to earn it by gameplay. So I'm definitely excited to see how they approach that. Same thing with the Joker's Wild quests. We don't really have any information on that. We don't really have anything that's been leaked or anything like that. So I'm just kind of curious to what that's going to look like. We got the exotic quests, which we're pretty sure is Thorn at this point. But there's also another exotic quest listed in the overall season besides the annual pass section. So two exotics potentially. So that'll be interesting.
Yeah, I'm hoping there's going to be more than two, because in Black Army we got 4. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping, like, it's nice to get like more exotics, but I hope they double down and give us, at least as much as Black Armory.
More exotics are always better.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see what Iron Banner is going to look like, because they were talking about how they're taking the powerful drops out of it. I'm curious to see if it's just going to be Iron Banner again, or if they're going to try to do anything special with it. So, yeah, one of my hopes is that they kind of dive into the lore of the Drifter a little more, because kind of following some of the story behind the giant thing he's dragging behind his ship. I don't know if anybody's kind of dug into that a little bit. It's a pretty interesting story, and it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out with the interaction between him and the Guardians in general. If you haven't dug into it, My Name is Bife has a really good video about it. He also has one that's really dives into Ada and her mother, and that all kind of ties in together, which is really interesting. But the thing that's in that giant thing behind his ship, I'm kind of could be a game changer. So I'm really interested to see how that plays out, and also how the new Gambit works, how much change there's going to be to the mechanics, because they said there's going to be new maps and also private matches and things like that. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm also really excited to see what they do with the game, with them not having to focus on building a raid this time around. So I'm really interested to see what they bring us as a form of endgame content and how Gambit will incorporate into it, maybe. So I'm also curious to see how they change the Crucible to make it more fun for competitive players, because obviously the competitive landscape needs a lot of love right now. People are not enjoying competitive, and that's across the board. Whether you're somebody chasing after Luna's Howl,
PvP in general, it definitely it's very stale right now. It needs some life instilled into it. It needs new maps, new game modes, things like that.
Yeah.
Maps that are more situated for 6v6 play, like longer range maps, and overall tweaking of just the playlists in general.
And not for nothing, I mean, they really need to give us a better reason to play all of these activities. They need to have specific rewards to playing Clash, or specific rewards that you get for playing Control, for example, or Iron Banner. Everything needs to have its own unique, specific, special drops that people actually want to use, that makes them stand out from everything else. And that's the problem I think Bungie is having right now.
Yeah, I think there's also like a lot of wasted potential with Crucible Labs. I mean, when they first were talking about that, there was some excitement around it because it was a potential for you to get in there and really try out some new modes and potentially have those rolling out quickly and just breathing new life into it on a much regular schedule. But it just kind of became this, oh, there's that thing. We can go in and do some private matches and try it out and then not touch it again. So it kind of fell on its face, and I think there's still a lot of potential there if they really dive into it.
Oh, I agree 100%. I think they could have used that as the testing ground for their new content. They could have given people something special for doing those activities, like maybe like a very unique emblem that would make you want to try out new things in Destiny. Make it interactive. Make it where you can give feedback, maybe get like something cool from the Bungie store. I definitely think they have a lot of opportunities with Crucible Labs that could help to guide the future of the game. I mean, maybe even design like a really cool gun that you can let people use in the game, and if you did play Crucible Labs, it potentially would drop for you in that activity. And if it dropped for you, then you can keep it. And it's like you getting early access to something new.
Yeah, I was envisioning they were going to do something like a PTS, a playtest server, and it ended up not being that at all. I don't know if you guys ever played on a PTS in any game?
Not that I recall.
What is a PTS?
Public test server, right?
Public test server, yeah. So a lot of games have done it, and the most recent one I was involved in was The Division, actually. So the Division, every time they were working on a new expansion or even just a new sandbox change, they would open up a test server that was the exact game, but it had all the changes made to it, and they would actually bring your character over, so you'd have all your gear and everything, but they would have all the changes made to it, and they would keep it open weeks, months at a time in some cases, depending on if it was a sandbox change or if it was actually an expansion. And you would get to kind of test it all out, and both you could test it out, but they could really test it out. And they had direct lines of feedback to you where you could say, this works, this does not work, this is broken, you got to change this. And they would gather all that feedback, not only from the community, but from their own information that they would gather on their own. And before that even launched, all those community concerns would be taken care of and then launched into the game. So it was a real chance for the developer and the community to kind of bond for that common goal and come out with a product that people were a lot happier with. So that was what I was envisioning for Crucible Labs, and it just did not come out that way.
Catch us live every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/The Destiny Show. If you like the show, please share with friends, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more Destiny content. You can find The Destiny Show podcast on Apple, Spotify, Google, Podbean, and all major podcast platforms. New episodes available Fridays.